Hello viewers and welcome to my vlog. Now it's called Rob Blog, but it really is just a vlog. And why do you call it Rob Blog then? You may well ask. Well, basically because it is my vlog and I can call it whatever I want to. Well, happy holiday seasons, greetings, Merry Christmas yet to come. Oh, look at my little friend I have tonight. Is this not? I bought this early in the season. Now I showed you one a few days ago, a bigger white one, but it was a reindeer. This is like a little bunny sort of reindeer. I'm not quite sure with these antlers, but is it? Look at this. Look at this pretty little gown she's wearing. She's got her pretty little ballet slippers on. She's ready to plie, and isn't that nice? So this is my co-host tonight, and I'm going to leave her sitting right here. You probably won't be able to see her, but here she is. One of the nice things I like about Christmas is surprises. And I have to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that I got a surprise today in the form of a Christmas card, and I got it from a friend that I have not heard of or from in 50 years. 50 years. 50 years. Well, it was a little, I must say, I was a bit verklempt. I was a little verklempt. I was clutching my Scrooge sweater and a bit verklempt. But it's wonderful. Since I opened the card earlier today, we've had a conversation via email. We plan to have a longer conversation by the telephone when we get into the month of January. But could you imagine, 50 years ago, and we're both still alive and kicking. And anyways, I just thought that's one of the wonderful things about the holiday season. It really is. So anyways, we have to get to A Christmas Carol, A Ghost Story of Christmas, because time is marching on and we still have a little bit of the book to read, you see. Oh, do I have it upside down? No, it's good. A Christmas Carol. So yesterday we left Scrooge with the nephew, had visited him. So today, let's see what happens. So the nephew's gone, and all of a sudden in comes 3 men. Yep, they just walked right into the office. Scrooge and Marley's, I believe, said one of the gentlemen, referring to his list that he had in front of him. It was probably on a dollar store clipboard. Well, these 3 gentlemen were a little bit on the large size, a little bit too much port and mincemeat pies, perhaps. But they stood with their hats off in Scrooge's office right in front of Scrooge. I have the pleasure of addressing Mr. Scrooge or Mr. Marley, said one of the gentlemen. Mr. Marley has been dead these 7 years, said Mr. Scrooge. He died 7 years ago. As a matter of fact, said Scrooge, it was this very night. Oh, my goodness, then. Well, the 3 gentlemen thought at least they were addressing someone who perhaps would be a kindred spirit. Wait till they find out what's going to happen. At this festive time of the year, this season of the year, Mr. Scrooge, we would like you, and we go to different people about town, but we would like you to make a little slight provision for the poor and destitute. They must be talking about me, I'm sure. Anyways, the poor and destitute apparently suffer at this time of the year, according to the gentleman. There are hundreds of thousands of them, and they're all in want, and they need our help. Mr. Scrooge stopped for a second. He said, are there no prisons? Well, yes, there are plenty of prisons, said the gentleman, laying down the pen again. The union workhouses, are they still in full operation? Oh, well, they are still, said one of the gentlemen. I wish I could say they were not. The treadmills, said Mr. Scrooge, and the poor law, are they not in full vigor? Oh, yes, they're very busy, sir. Oh, well, Mr. Scrooge grasped his sweater. You notice I'm wearing my Scrooge-like sweater today? He grasped his sweater and said, well, thank goodness, because I thought all of a sudden something had happened and it had stopped all the operations. Well, Mr. Scrooge was genuinely concerned about this, and he said, I'm very glad to hear it is otherwise. Well, of course, the 3 gentlemen throw in the word Christian to try to get Mr. Scrooge to give them some money, and he says that this time of year the want is keenly felt. Yes, very keenly felt. So they grabbed a pen, dabbed it to his tongue to give it a nice clear ink on the paper and said, "So, Mr. Scrooge, what should I put you down for?" "Nothing," said Mr. Scrooge. "Mr. Scrooge?" And the gentleman thought, well, that's nice. He wants to remain anonymous. "No, I wish to be left alone," he says. "Mr. Scrooge?" Yes, he wants to be left alone. "I don't make merry myself at Christmas, and I can't afford to make other people merry who are poor and destitute." Ooh, he's a scoundrel, that Mr. Scrooge, isn't he? Well, Mr. Scrooge kind of looked at the gentleman, and eventually they all got pissed off with one another, and the three gentlemen left the office, and they still wished Scrooge a happy season, but Scrooge was just more like, bah, humbug. So the men left. Scrooge had just settled down to his work, counting his money, when all of a sudden Bob Marley comes into his office. "Well," Scrooge says as he looks up from his paper, "I'll suppose you want the full day off tomorrow." "If that would be convenient, Mr. Scrooge." "It wouldn't be convenient," said Mr. Scrooge. "It's not fair. If I was to stop you half a crown for it, you'd be crying up your belly, wouldn't you? Down the other side, wouldn't you, Bob Scratchit?" It's really Cratchit, but I enjoy calling him Bob Scratchit. Anyhow, he said, if I didn't give it off to you, you'd think yourself ill-used, wouldn't you? Bob tried to smile a little bit, but it didn't work. Then the clerk said, which was Bob, he said, "Well, it's only once a year, Mr. Scrooge." "Well, that's a very poor excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December, and Boxing Day, and the 27th and the 28th as well. You know, because with the rules today, it's double time one day and day off in lieu the next, and half time and triple time, whatever it is that poor Mr. Cratchit is working. It was a lot of money," says Mr. Scrooge. He was concerned with that. But he said, "Okay, I suppose you'll be needing the whole day off then, Mr. Cratchit. You'd be at home with your wife, Miss Piggy, and oh no, that was the Muppet Christmas Carol, wasn't it? Well, let's call her Miss Piggy and the rest of the children. But you'll be in all the earlier next day." What a lovely man. Doesn't even give him Boxing Day off, and he lets him off a little bit early Christmas Eve, not that early, and then he has Christmas Day, and he's got to be back with nose to the grindstone and pen to paper Boxing Day morning. Harumph, Mr. Scrooge. Anyhow, it wasn't very long before Mr. Scrooge packed everything up, locked the office door, and off he went through the night, let's say. And it was foggy, and it was brisk, and it was damp, and it was chilly. Now, it's a fact that there was nothing at all particular about the knocker that was on the door at the front of Mrs. Scrooge's house when he arrived there. It was very large, but it just basically sat there, and someone would knock and tell him he had he'd won the lotto or something, and they'd knock on the door, but it was just an ordinary knocker. But here's the thing with this knocker. All of a sudden, it turned into Marley's face. That's correct. It was Marley's face. Is this not getting to be a bit of a ghost story? I believe so. Scrooge looked down at that fixedly. It says he looked fixedly at this phenomenon. And it went from Marley's face to a knocker, back to Marley's face to a knocker, then a pair of knockers. Scrooge didn't know who that was, but he saw a pair of knockers. And then it finally just went back to a single knocker. Well, he was startled, to say the least. So he went up the stairs, and he was a little hungry, even though he'd stopped off at the pub on the way home, and had that's our Mr. Scrooge. So he's upstairs, and he's feeling quite satisfied with himself, except he was a little bit hungry, so he had a little bit of gruel and, I don't know, a coffee from Tim Hortons or something to keep him happy, as he sat in front of his low fire. Because remember, Mr. Scrooge was a cheapo. Yes, he was. He didn't have a blazing fire with tons of pieces of wood and logs and coal. No, it was a tiny little fire. It's like if you imagine you stroke it. You strike the match. That's how big his fire was. That's how cheap this man was. Anyways, it was absolutely awful. And then all of a sudden, this noise and chains and scary stuff come down the hall, walked into the room where he was eating his gruel and drinking his Tim Hortons, double-double. And it turned out to be a ghost that looked like Marley. "Ooh," says Marley. Well, he says, "How now, Scrooge? You don't believe it's me, do you?" And Scrooge says, "You're Marley? And what do you want with me?" "Oh," he says, "much, very much," says Marley. "Well, who are you?" "Well, I'm the ghost. I just told you that, Mr. Scrooge." I think he needs to go to bed and get a good night's sleep. But he rattled his change and did this and did that and scared Mr. Scrooge. And then when Scrooge had finally settled down a little bit and his face went from the white, ghostly white it was, to kind of a little bit of a softer ghostly white, because he didn't have much of an opportunity to lay out on the beach when it was December. So Mr. Scrooge was a little white. Anyhow, Marley tells him about these 3 ghosts that are about to appear. The ghost of Christmas now, Christmas yet to come, and Christmas backwards and future. It sounds like there's a lot of ghosts there, but it was only really one ghost that was going to meet Mr. Scrooge somehow. Marley was a little vague on how that would happen, but he did say to expect the very first ghost at the strike of 1. It might have been midnight. But Marley screamed and yelled and said things about business and mankind was my business, and he was really trying to scare the living behoozes out of Scrooge. But I'm not sure that it worked. And Scrooge says, "Please don't be hard upon me, Jacob, please. Jacob, I pray you're not hard. You're always a good friend to me," said Mr. Scrooge. Thank ye. Anyways, we're waiting for the arrival of the first ghost, and Marley makes his exit, and there's screaming and hollering and scary faces and chains and whatever. And so Scrooge closed his window. It was getting chilly and he wanted to head to bed. And he looked at the door where Marley had come in and entered, and there didn't seem to be anything there. So he picked up his copy of Canadian House and Home magazine, December issue, hopped into bed, and decided to get a little bit of sleep. And he wondered and he went, "Pshaw, the ghosts aren't going to come." Well, we shall see about that. Mr. Scrooge, A Christmas Carol. And more of the Christmas Carol will be coming up too in this very next Roblog. So remember, ladies and gentlemen, remember, love and joy be all around for everyone in this year 2022. We've still got a few weeks, so if you haven't spread that love and joy, you still have some time. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining me. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.